Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Impactful Coaching Podcast, where we talk about mindset, growth, leadership, and what it takes to build a successful business and a meaningful life. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest from Sweden, Adele Kamel Whitley. Adele is a life transformation coach who helps high achievers that feel like they've achieved everything on the outside, but feel empty on the inside. She works with them on a deeper, meaningful level and helps create transformation. Now, the thing I love about Adele's work is that she comes from her own personal journey. The foundation for her coaching work started with her own personal journey where she became a high achiever herself, where she ticked all the boxes. She did what she was told. She graduated, she took up a high profile corporate job, and then she performed at her best. But then as she went through the motions, she felt empty on the inside. And that led to her going on a quest. The quest started with, is there something more to life than what already is? And then from there, she became the life transformation coach that she is today. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to welcome Adele Kamel Whitley today. Adele, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, Harry. What a lovely introduction. I don't even have to talk.
Adele, it's so nice to have you at our show today. As a life transformation coach, I think you have an interesting vibe to yourself. That's what I noticed when I met you for the first time. So now, just for our guests, let's talk about if people were to meet you for the first time today, can you just briefly share about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So yes, as you said, my name is Adele Kamel Whitley. I currently live in Sweden, born in Lebanon. And my whole work is to question everything that we've been taught about how a successful, fulfilled life look like and how we're supposed to live our life, and literally unlearn everything and go back and ask ourselves, not what do people want me to be or what should I be or what looks successful for everyone, but more, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? What feels like a nice and fulfilled life to me? So that's basically what I do. And I sometimes it's very provoking questions that makes people question everything that they've believed so far. And that can sometimes be very tough for some people.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I do.
Now, as you say this, some of the questions that you bring up resonates with me as well, right? I'm just doing the things that I've been told to do. Sometimes I may have to reflect and then ask myself, what do I want? And then do what I truly want. That's actually an uncomfortable question for some people, especially when they've been conditioned by society, when they've been conditioned by family, by environment, to fulfill certain obligations. So
exactly.
that's a very interesting way to look at life. As one of the things is you went through this journey yourself, right? At one point of time, you ticked all the conventional boxes, what society asked you to, what your parents expected you to do,
Yeah.
And then from there, you realized that you had to go through a change, what really happened? What was that an event that triggered it, or how did this happen? Take us through.
Yes. Thank you for the question. I think, and I know when I was, for as long as I remember, I knew that I didn't like to do everything I was told. Even from school, I hated when the teacher told me that I need to do my assignment a certain way, or when I finished, I had to wait for the classmates, or when we had to play outside, I had to be part of a team. And like everything that everyone was trying to put me in a certain box, like every time they did that, I always questioned, like, why can I do it the way I wanted to? But as you know, our environment shapes us a lot. So in the end, I had to kind of follow the rules and, get in line. And I did. Also coming from a Lebanese family where education and status and how it looks on the outside is very important for my family, it was hard to break free from that. But I knew very early on that I didn't want to do the conventional way. And still I did. And I think some part of me was like, let me just do that so I have it done and then we'll see later. So I did. I took the degree. I had a full corporate career. I bought the house. I got married. I literally did everything that I was supposed to do on paper that was going to look good and feel good to me. And then I remember there was one time at the peak of my corporate career, I had everything, Harry. I was questioning, like, why doesn't it feel the way people told me it would feel? And that's when I realized, like, there is something I'm not doing right. There's something I'm not seeing here. And I went back inside, because you know how it is in the beginning. We try to change everything from the outside. We move to another country, we change the job, maybe we even change the partner that we have. But you still end up in the same place, unfulfilled, unhappy, and wonder, is this it? And then there was one time I was sitting in Mexico and I was doing a value exercise. And I remember as I was going through this exercise, on the top of my value list was freedom. And that's when it hit me why I was so unfulfilled in my life. Because if I was looking back then at my corporate job, even if I was a manager, I was being micromanaged. I was told when to be there, how to spend the budget that I have, how to manage my team, when to take vacation. Literally, I was just put into a box thinking that I have, because I had a manager position, that I had much more freedom. Right, power, right. Yeah. And I realized, wow, if my top value is freedom, and this is how I'm living my life, there's a big misalignment for what's important for me and how I'm currently living my life. And when those two are not aligned, there will be this feeling inside. It's like, something is missing. Is this all to life? Life must be more than this. And for me, that was it. I knew I was living fully misaligned with my values, meaning I was also misaligned with myself, because that's what values is, right? It's just a reflection of what matters to you, what's important to you. So that was a pivotal moment. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it anymore, for sure.
Yep. All right. So tell me what happened. So after that pivotal moment, how did you transition to this coaching space? Like, what was the journey like? Did you just go quit your job, or did you just did you just plan your finances? Did you just take, did you take it one step at a time? Tell us.
Yeah, great question. I had been coaching for a long time before that. So I had been coaching before, during, but somewhere in my mind, I had this belief system that you couldn't live from coaching. Like, coaching is just something you do on the side. It's just a hobby. Although inside I knew that as a person, that was my zone of genius. That is when I'm thriving. That is also what most people came to me for. So when I got this epiphany of I'm living my life wrong, most people might not be able to do that, but I come from a finance background. So I had also invested a lot of money in funds and stocks. So I had this financial cushion. So I actually, the day after, quit my job. But that's also a reflection of me. Like, I'm a very spontaneous person. Like, I couldn't stay one more second. The pain of staying was much harder than the pain of leaving. And that's also a big reason why I do my job today. I don't want people to come to the point where they come to a little bit of a panic mode of staying somewhere that is so painful. I want to bring the awareness much earlier on in the journey.
Got it. So, there's this interesting point that you mentioned about the pain of staying, right? A lot of people choose to continue and sustain with that pain, all right? Hoping that things would get better, hoping that they could optimize it a little more, hoping that they could improvise a little more, and then they'll be able to have that freedom, What would you tell to those people,
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, because that's when we start to lie to ourselves and we tell ourselves it's not that bad. This is how it's supposed to be. It's like this for everyone. It's just for a short period of time. Be grateful. Don't ask for too much, right? So you start to lie to yourself and convince yourself that where you are is good enough. But then we also know that good is the biggest enemy of great. Good is actually the worst place to be in, because when it's good, it's actually not that bad. And that's why most people won't leave. When you get the money, you have a partner, he's good or she's good. But it's not fulfilling. It's not meaningful. It's not the way it can be for you to feel, to live your life to the fullest potential. So I just think people lie to themselves to stay where they are, because leaving requires so much more ownership than staying.
Well, that's... So just come again, what did you say? Leaving?
Requires you to take ownership. It takes a lot of responsibility to admit to yourself that where I am today is it's not the fullest truth to myself. And then taking that leap, it doesn't mean quit your job. It could be also change how you approach your job, So I'm not telling everyone to quit their job. I'm telling people to ask themselves, is where you are today in alignment with who you are, with who you want to be, with where you want to go, with what fulfills you, with what makes you feel alive, with what excites you, with what can expand you to your biggest and best potential. Is that it? Or are you just there because someone at some point told you that this is what success looks like?
Got it. That makes sense. So you would recommend everybody to go on an introspection journey to see where they really are, are they happy with who they are? Is that something that they want for themselves?
100%. That's what it all starts.
Now, but it's the same thing with a lot of high achievers. Like you said, good is the enemy of the great. And then a lot of people choose to be good. And then what it does is when they are taught to be grateful for what is already good, what ends up happening is it just gets incrementally better from there. Sometimes it slips, sometimes it doesn't, but just gets incrementally better. But it's not absolutely great. They're just coping. So obviously they feel empty on the inside, when they experience this. But this happens to a lot of high achievers as well. Why do you think that happens? What's the cause?
I would say because we might mistake achievement for fulfillment. Mm-hmm. So achieving something doesn't automatically mean you're going to feel fulfilled. And that's actually the worst trap. To achieve success or climb the ladder that's not yours and not feel fulfilled. So I think that's where we've been lied to in a certain way, that once you get there, once I get that paycheck, once I get that car, once I buy that house, once I get this life and achieve this kind of life, now I will feel fulfilled. And that's the journey I did. And then I was like, wait a minute, I did everything everyone told me I should do. Why am I not feeling it? And the answer is because I never asked myself what I wanted to do, what fulfills me, what I'm curious to explore. I just listened to what everyone else around me told me.
Got it. So what would you say to someone who has spent their entire life, fulfilling expectations of other people, meeting all of the obligations and responsibilities, and they don't even know what it looks like to feel fulfilled for themselves? Or it's just a scary, uncomfortable truth, the thought of trying to be fulfilled for yourself.
Yeah. Of course it's scary because it's uncomfortable, it's unknown, it's unfamiliar. We were never taught to sit with ourselves and ask ourselves, what do I actually want? What makes me feel good? How would an ideal life look like to me? If no one else had an opinion, what would I be doing differently? So what would I say to someone? I would say, chill. You're exactly where you should be, because I don't want people to think that now you're listening to this podcast and wow, my whole life is been done wrong. It's not the case. You are exactly where you should be. This is your journey. And part of your journey is to realize, how can I start coming back home to myself? And coming back home to yourself is just to pause and start, like you said, to do the introspecting work, which is to start asking yourself the question you never asked yourself, because we were never taught to even have the permission to ask ourselves those questions. We were taught a version of success that is like a copy-paste from society for everyone. And that's not the truth. You're unique. What feels good to you, what's meaningful to you, what's important to you is different than what is important to someone else. So I would say just pause, take it easy, do not panic, and then start by sitting with yourself. Take 20 minutes, sit with yourself, ask yourself, how would I like my life to look like? How would I want to feel on a day-to-day basis? Because I would almost say, like 100%, that most people, the predominant feeling they have is not the feeling of excitement and joy and fulfillment. It's more stress and pressure, especially high achievers. And that's not the way life is supposed to be. Absolutely not. There is another way.
Makes sense. I agree with you. Now, the thing is, if you look at the trajectory of most high achievers, the reason they are high achievers is because they are compensating for a lack that they experience at some point of time, Now, for some people, it could be the lack of resources early on in childhood. For some people, it could be maybe a set of expectations set by parents, society, or conditioning that basically told them, hey, you're not good enough until you reach this. And then so they've learned to operate at that level of high achievement,
Yep.
And now the question that I have for you is, what would you say to people like that? So obviously getting them to sit with themselves and then ask themselves, how do you want to feel on a daily basis? All right. But they've also, because of the pressure that they have experienced, because of the stress that they've experienced, and because of the scarcity they've experienced, they may also have a belief system which basically says, hey, I can write and describe what I want for myself, but what? The way life works is I'm not going to have it. What would you say to that person?
Definitely. Yeah, it all comes down to worthiness. Exactly what you said. We believe that we kind of tie our achievements to our self-worth. This is like a classic one for high achievers. And realizing that that's almost like trying to feed a ghost. It's never going to be full. So you can never try to fill that void by looking on the outside. Again, you can try to achieve the C-suite position. You can get the money, you can get the house, you can get the car, you can achieve. But there's a reason why all of these achievements still doesn't make you feel good enough. Because you're looking in the wrong place. So when a person is acting from a place of lack, when I'm trying to achieve this position so that I can feel good about myself, now that's coming from the wrong place. We can still aim high. We can still become high achievers if it comes from a place of curiosity. If it comes from a place of, I wonder what is possible for me. How far can I stretch? How much more can I become? But if we come from a place of wholeness, right? So now I'm not saying, let me get that title so I can feel worthy. I'm saying, I'm already worthy. Now let me get that title so I can see what is possible for me. How can I expand more? How can I grow more? What more is there for me to achieve, but not from a place of lack? Do you feel the difference there?
Yep, I agree. I can sense that. So instead of operating from a place of lack, I need to be there, I have to have done that, versus, wow, amazing, I've achieved so much. So let me just see what else I can reach for, what else I can stretch. It's like the glass half full versus the half empty mentality, right?
Yeah, I always say it's almost like you can tell yourself, I'm a masterpiece and a work in progress. So a masterpiece is already whole, right? So there's no lack there. There's nothing to do more. And I'm also a work in progress, meaning what else is possible? But as you said, we've been taught from a young age that once we get the good grades, now we get the accolades. Once we get the next position, now we are something, someone. So we attach our identity to our achievements. That is a very, very dangerous place to be in. Because who are you when your job is taken away from you? Who are you when your money is taken away from you? Who are you when you have a divorce and this perfect relationship is taken away from you?
Yep. So how would you help someone find themselves in that position? Let's assume they've just been pre-programmed by society, running this typical blueprint, and then now they're in this crossroads, maybe their job's been taken away from them. Maybe their relationships been taken away from them. Things happen to people, right? So what would you say to that? How do you go about finding yourself at that point of time?
Yeah, no, for sure. By realizing that we are born inherently worthy. And answering that question, who am I beyond the titles? Who am I beyond the achievements? What qualities do I possess? Who do I want to be? Something that no one can take away from you is all your qualities that comes from inside. It's not the external things, the title, the house, the car. Those are just add-ons. But who am I beyond all that? That's where you are. That's who you are. That's also where your identity is. It's not attached to something. Whether you have money or not, you have the same worth. I always tell my clients, you cannot become less worthy if you have less, but also you cannot become more worthy if you have more. And that hits for more people because that's what they believe. It's a belief system. They think that with more comes more worthiness. That's an absolute lie.
Now, as you say this, I can't help but laugh, but because people have this preconceived notion, right? All right, everybody believes that you are more worthy once you achieve this. You are more worthy, once you achieve this, and then obviously you are breaking a lot of beliefs right here. You are worthy as you are, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't have anything, you are still worthy. That's a
Yeah.
huge vantage point to operate from,
100%.
And I know, you have this interesting philosophy called buy yourself. I assume that this is related to that.
Yes. So yeah, Buy Yourself, which is my company, my life work, is the whole philosophy of how many people choose their lives based on other people's expectations, based on other people's dreams and values and version of success, right? And in my work, that's when you sell yourself. You sell yourself for external validation. You sell yourself for external applause. So buying yourself is when you start to make those small, it can be small decisions back to buy yourself back to yourself, back home to who you are. Start to, peel off the layers that you've been put on top of yourself of who you think you need to be for people to like you, for people to accept you. And start by realizing that I don't need all that. If I start to like, accept, and be with myself, then everything else is going to be fine.
Got it. That makes sense. Now, let's just take one example. I just want to run you through a scenario of a typical audience in our podcast. All right. So this could be a high achiever, a high profile executive or an entrepreneur, all right, who has achieved a good level of success. All right. But then they still know that there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot more. Now, usually these high achieving entrepreneurs, what ends up happening is they don't. So even though they run their business, they don't have complete control over their businesses. All right. So typically what ends up happening is some of these investors raise funding, so they are obligated to their investors, or they raise mortgage. They have some kind of a mortgage, so that obligates them to that mortgage. And if you look at their personal lives, the personal lives is almost like it's not picture perfect. It's here and there. All right. So since they are busy working all the time, the relationships at home, they've become also strained. Now let's talk about this type of entrepreneur or executive. What would you do to him or her so they can start building the life they want for themselves? And they did want to build this company, or they did want to get into this career, by themselves, or their own volition. They got into this, they worked hard, they got to this level, but then suddenly, all of a sudden, they're in this trap. For the entrepreneurs, probably those investor meetings every quarter, where they have to present their earnings, and then they have to do their and then they have to deal with their clients. They have to put out fires. That's one classic case. Or again, for the executive, the executive, like you said, it was your journey, right? Where you had your freedom and power. It was a very limited power and freedom that you actually had. It was just an illusion that you had your power and freedom. So tell me, how would you help someone like that?
So if I understand the question right, this entrepreneur is not happy where he is, or where is the challenge here?
Well, they just feel they are trapped where they are, so there is a lot of crisis that they're probably dealing with, from a business standpoint, or from a emotional or relationship standpoint, so that's typically there is this crossroads. All right, they've gotten into a place which has created a lot of stress for themselves, and then now they're really wondering, where am I headed? My relationship is bad, my business is bad. What am I even doing here? It's that crossroads.
Yeah, no, for sure. That happens a lot. And usually it stems from some kind of belief that maybe in order to have something, you need to sacrifice something. So sometimes that can be a lot of conflicting values, or even that you go against some of your values. So I would start by asking, what is important here? And where are we abandoning our values, what is important for us, our own needs, in the belief of we need to do that for this to happen? So sometimes we can end up doing the same things. For example, we can still end up running the business, but it comes from a different place. It sounds to me like this person is doing it a lot from pressure, from lack, from a belief system that I need to sacrifice my whole life for this to happen. But that doesn't need to be true. Like, could it coexist? Could we have a healthy life with our family, with ourselves, taking care of our health, and build a successful business? And the answer is yes. I think that the hustle culture has taught us to believe the opposite, that these two cannot coexist. So I would start to look, where have we abandoned who we are and what's important to us for the business, and how can we start to look at the both needs and how can they coexist in your world? They don't have to take each other out. For example, having a successful business does not require you to sacrifice your whole life. But many, many people think that.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty true, right? People are exposed to black and white thinking. They carry black and white thinking. You can have this, but you can't have that. You can be good at this, but you can't be good at that. You can't have a balanced life and a successful business or a successful career. So this is it's something that we've seen a lot of people spend their lives like that, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things.
Exactly. And one of the questions I ask my clients when they put up goals, I ask them, so based on this goal and the process of your day-to-day work, would you enjoy having this life for the next 5 years? Basically, I'm asking them, would you enjoy the process of getting to this goal? And if the answer is no, then it's also not the right goal for you. Because we don't know if we're going to reach the goal or not, right? So imagine spending 5 years hating your every day-to-day life in the pursuit of a goal that you think that you want to have, and then you're ending up not having the goal, and on top of that, you hated your life. Like, that is failure 101. So the most important thing for me is to realize this goal that we have, how can we create the journey that we're also actually enjoying the journey? So for this entrepreneur, is there a way to build this business where you're actually enjoying it, where you actually are doing things that fulfills you, where you're actually taking care of what matters to you as well? And if the answer is no, then maybe we should start looking how to do things differently or totally another way.
Yep. So what would one way of relooking these things? So let's take the case of the entrepreneur. How would this entrepreneur have to relook their business? Relook at their value system. What would you suggest? So they can make it more enjoyable while working towards their goal.
Yeah, by realizing. You said one thing, which is your values. So realizing, how is this aligned with my values, with who I am, with also in the business? Am I enjoying my work? Am I using my work and spending my time in my zone of genius? Or am I just, like you said, putting out fires? If I'm putting out fires, how can we delegate that? How can I pull myself out and start working in the work that excites me, where I thrive the most? So sometimes we forget about ourselves, thinking that we need to be everything in the business, and forgetting that actually the reason why we build this business is for us to have the freedom that's taken away maybe in a corporate job, maybe. The second thing is to start looking at energy. What is draining my energy at the moment? And sometimes it can be the task, but sometimes it can also be the thought behind the task of why I think I need to do a certain thing. So it could also be a change in perspective. And that's many times what I help people do, is to realize that we're not victim of our circumstances. We're actually victim of our perspective. So if we can shift our perspectives, if we can shift the come from, now maybe the actual action comes from a different energy. So where is my energy leaking? And how can I start to fix those leaking energy areas? Yeah.
That's where you said we're not a victim of our circumstance, but rather we are a victim of our perspective. You could have the worst circumstances, but if you have the right perspective, you will figure out a way to overcome it. If you take the story of Viktor Frankl, when he was sent into the chambers, that's when he realized that the ability to be a witness and actually to shift his perspective, that had huge implications, and that's something that everybody has in their control, right? They are not a victim of circumstances. They are a victim of perspective. So if they just learn to look at things in the right perspective, life would just be more meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, an energy audit is perfect there to look at the thought, habits, beliefs, everything, and go, what's draining my energy and what's giving me energy, and how can we start to balance that out as well?
Makes sense. So when it comes to this inner work, which is transforming a person's life, and then living the authentic life that we always wanted to live, what are some mistakes that people make, as they get on this journey? Because at one point of time, all these people realize that they are a victim of circumstance, They are just pushed into this moment, and then the circumstances are always unfavorable for them. So they carry that story in the head. So you tell me, like, what are some mistakes, and then how would you help them prevent it?
Yeah. So the answer is literally in the question. It is what the mistakes is that people try to change the circumstances. And there's the saying, wherever you go, there you are. So I sometimes joke and say, you can move to Bali and you can sit in meditation, but if you don't change, if the person that's looking at the circumstance is not changing, nothing will change. So you know what they say, when you change who you are, everything that you see changes as well. So most people try to change the outer world when everything happens from inside.
Yep. Again, high achievers have this attitude that they can work hard, they can hustle, and then they can push themselves to create the perfect outer life. And I think that's something that's ingrained to them because of society, and then they've also experienced that. But without the inner work, I think you basically run into the same situation. You can go to Bali, you can go to Switzerland, you can go to Antarctica.
Yeah, and you'll end up facing the same challenges, the same patterns. And that's when you realize that, okay, there's something else here, right? Maybe I need to start turning inwards. And then to your point with Viktor Frankl, like you can be in hell, but if you can start to see that the work comes from inside, everything changes on the outside.
Yep. Now, I want to ask you, so what would be some perspective changes would you recommend that people experience, what are some new perspectives that you would suggest that people embrace?
I think one of the biggest one that I teach the high achievers I work with is that rest is equally as important for success than productivity. So many high achievers think that achieving all these goals, you cannot rest. They think that they're separate from that. What I say is that 100% on and 100% off is the ultimate formula for success, meaning resting 100% and working 100%. And most high achievers, they only work 100%. And then they burn out on the way. Even if you're doing things that you like, even if you're on the right path, if you don't take time to recharge and rejuvenate and just, being in the being instead of the doing all the time, that's not going to help you reach success because it's not a sustainable way of living your life. So I think one of the biggest lies we've been told is that you need to be always on, always working, always moving towards your goal. While I would say that moving towards your goal, part of it is resting. And that feels a little bit counterproductive because you're doing nothing, right? So that's what most high achievers cannot be on the couch for half an hour or an hour and do nothing. That feels very unsafe. It's like a threat to their identity of being a successful person. And that mindset shift is huge.
Yep. That's pretty true. I sort of agree with you. Many high achievers carry this burden with them that they have to be doing this, doing that, and then just have to be this hamster wheel, and then they never really look at it. But then they also have this anxiety, that basically prevents them from completely disconnecting themselves. If you take a typical high achiever, what ends up happening is if they have weekends off, they're probably spending time checking their email, reading something that's essential to the running of whatever that they're doing. What's happening with AI, how is the world getting disrupted, etc. So how would you help? What would you say to those people that need to truly disconnect?
So for sure, this comes from a drive of I always need to be on, or otherwise I will fall behind. This is all the thoughts that's going through in their head. I will fall behind. I will not be worthy. I will not feel enough. And the first step here is to know that it will be uncomfortable. Rest will feel uncomfortable. So it's a total mindset / nervous system upgrade, right? So yes, sitting on the couch for 20 minutes will feel uncomfortable and unfamiliar in the beginning. And that's okay. Because the more you do it, the more you're now reprogramming yourself and upgrading your nervous system to teach yourself that it's not safe to be on the couch. It's not a threat to you. It's a threat to your ego, but it's not a threat to your life. And the more you do it, the more you understand that actually this is maybe even giving me energy. This is even maybe helping me to achieve more when I'm actually in the doing. Because if you look at the elite athletes, one day before a big game or a big run or whatever they do, they don't train, they don't go full in, they rest. They eat good, they feed their body everything they need so that they can be at the peak when it's time to perform. And the same applies for us high achievers in the workplace, in our businesses. So if we can take care of the body that we have and make it work for us, meaning feed it good, rest it good, sleep properly, train good, so that when it's time to be on our peak performance, we have actually made that body work with us instead of against us.
Got it. That makes sense. So there was just one other interesting perspective that you brought, right, which is called the zone of genius. How would you help someone find or tap into their zone of genius?
I would say that your zone of genius is where you're in a flow state. And flow state is literally when you're doing something and you're forgetting everything else. It's what is easy for you, but maybe hard for other people. It's when you forget even your basic needs, like needing to go to the toilet or, eating food. For example, when I coach, I forget time and space. I don't know where I am. I can't even retell what I'm doing because I'm in my zone of genius. I'm in a flow state. And most people, when they are in their zone of genius, they just lose themselves in it. It's not hard, it's not effort, it's not push. It comes from a powerful state because it comes from you. You're not trying to do something, be something you're not. You just be, you just are. We also have other zones where you have to maybe think more or push more or, try harder and find motivation. That's not your zone of genius. Your zone of genius is where literally everything feels easy.
Yep. So now as you say it, I see a lot of professionals, I don't know if they even operate at the zone of genius. What if they actually operate at a zone of distraction? What do you say to that?
Say again the question.
I'm saying, I like when you mentioned when you're in the zone of genius, you forget everything,
Yeah.
You forget about needing to drink water, you forget about having to eat, and then you do your best work, it brings in your flow state. The thing is, in this modern world, right, the way I've seen it is, I've seen both executives and entrepreneurs, they're not really in a zone of genius. They're usually in a zone of distraction, So that's why I'm just wondering, how would you address?
Yeah, okay. So zone of distraction, meaning they're doing everything to distract themselves from doing the work they actually should be doing?
Yes, possibly that's one. Or they're going to do the work, which they should be doing, but then they find themselves getting distracted and then they just don't do what's actually meaningful. They do a lot of other small things rather than the one meaningful thing that basically moves the needle, Things like that, people, again, it's a spectrum, right? People have behaviors in different spectrums, but typically this is what, all right? Because I know the thing is, I understand what you say about getting into a flow state, but I really don't know if in this day and age, do people actually get into a flow state that often, So you just have to.
Agree. No, for sure. And I think everything has to do with attention and dopamine. Doing everything else but the actual thing sometimes is mostly the easier stuff. The stuff that gives you, fast dopamine, fast kickback, and fast gratification, right? So most people wouldn't maybe put down their head. So for example, now I'm writing a book. So for me to sit down and write a book, it takes for me to take away all the distractions, not answer the emails, not answer the texts, not answer my clients, not checking social media, because all of this would be easier for me to do than to sit down and work focused for 2 hours. Because those give me immediate gratification, instant gratification. The writing the book is a much delayed gratification. So in this day of age with social media, I think the way we are wired and trained is that we're constantly looking to finish things that gives us fast gratification. You know, writing the email, answering the phone call, answering the text. All of those is just like this. So sometimes what I think we need to do is go on a dopamine detox. Mm-hmm. So that our body and our, you know, the whole system needs to crave a dopamine so that we can maybe finish the hard task and get dopamine from that. But the more small and easy tasks we do, the less hungry we are for the dopamine that comes from finishing the hard task. This is what I truly believe is happening right now, is one of the things. Another thing with distraction is also maybe we're avoiding something, because doing the hard work also requires a little bit more from us. And sometimes when it requires more from us, it also can help us feel and face the feeling of not being enough, maybe rejection, all those, you know, feelings we don't want to feel. So one question I ask people when they tell me that they procrastinate, I ask them, what do you avoid feeling right now? And sometimes that can be the feeling of maybe making a mistake or failure or rejection. And that can also be another part of being in the zone of distraction, you said, right? Yeah.
Yep, I agree. So dopamine detox. So I understand what you said about having to, do a dopamine detox. So you basically value the dopamine that comes from conquering a more longer challenging task. So how would you suggest, what do you do to detox? I mean, what do you do for dopamine detox, and what would you recommend our audience to do?
So what I do is the first thing in the morning, I literally, before I even turn on my phone, before I even connect to the world, I connect with myself. And I sit with myself and I ask myself, if there is one or three things that would be achieved today, if I achieve them today, that is enough for me to move the needle forward towards what I want in my life, towards my goal. What are these 1 to 3 things? And then I write them down. Right now is only one thing for me, which is my book. So it's maybe write for 2 hours or write, I don't know, chapter 2 or 3, whatever that is for me. And then I don't even put on my phone before that. I don't even connect to any part of the world that can give me those dopamine. So I kind of starve myself from dopamine. Or I also tell myself intentionally what is important for me right now. And that is the most important thing. And then that's the first thing I start to work on. Once that is done, now I can go and do whatever I want. But now I'm intentionally choosing what to do instead of the first thing we do is opening up the phone and start reacting to the world, you know? Because once you've done that, it's almost like, you know, a slope that you cannot stop it. Once you've opened your phone, once you've opened your email, once you've connected to your colleagues, now you're starting to be in a reactive mode. You're not so much in an intentional controlling mode of your day. You're just reacting to everything that's happening. So for me, it's deciding what's important for you today and start by doing that before you do anything else.
Yep. Deciding what you want to do for the day and then doing that before you do anything else. That
yes.
Makes sense.
Yes.
So keeping that in mind, again, you know, typically what ends up with high achievers is, so if you ask them, what is that one thing that you need to do to move the needle? They may not have one thing. They may actually have 10 things.
Yeah.
How do you silence that voice? How do you break it to them?
If I tell them, then you will only have one thing. You only have 1 hour. 1 hour to achieve one thing in this week that will move the needle forward. What would you choose to do? They'll need to decide. Like, you cannot do everything in 1 hour. I know the first thing they do is give me a list of 10 things, but then we need to start narrow it down. It's a skill, right?
That's powerful. You know, I think many people in our audience would love to see if you could share with them a couple of questions that they can ask themselves on a day-to-day basis. You know, that could be, if there's just one thing that I need to do in this 1 hour, what would be the best thing that I can do? You know, because I think I remember I came across this book once upon a time. It's called Being You, Changing the World, and it's a slightly different concept, but over there, one of the main fundamentals is they ask questions. They basically provoke you to ask questions. Because if I make statements, if I say I want to be this, I want to do that, you are just basically boxing yourself. But rather,
Yes.
if you ask yourself questions, and if you ask yourself powerful questions, it elicits a much better response, which is more than what you can imagine. That really happens. So Adele, I think whatever we spoke about was incredibly valuable, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people who are listening may find value and then may want to learn more from you or want to work with you. So can you tell me about how you help others, build a more meaningful life? Just share, just tell us, how do you help, and then how can they get in touch with you?
Yes, of course. I'm happy to receive whoever liked this, even if it's questions or opinions or anything that landed. I'm super happy if you get in touch with me, because that's also very valuable to me. And the way I work one-on-one with CEO, business owners, entrepreneurs, managers, in a one-on-one container. And mostly the work is, I don't put you through a 12-week program or a 1-year program where it's like fixed modules. I don't believe in that kind of coaching. For me, I always say that I show up for what shows up. Meaning you as an individual, you come to me, and my job is to literally question your bullshit stories of why you are where you are today and why you cannot be where you want to be today. And that's literally how we work. And many times it's a little bit of uncomfortable, but it's also where your edge is. That's also where your growth is. So I think most of my clients tell me that I have this tough love approach, but believe me, that's also where transformation happens. It doesn't happen for me agreeing with everything. It happens for me questioning, where did you buy into the lies that's running your life today?
That's interesting. So in the description section below, we'll have a link to Adele's website where you can check her out, and then you can check out her By Yourself coaching program. So Adele, if you could leave entrepreneurs and other high achievers with just one final message, what would that be?
I would say the one thing that hit me when I was a little younger, that I read a book called The Top 5 Regrets of Dying by a woman called Bronnie Ware. And she interviewed people on their deathbed, and she asked them, what is your top 5 regrets of dying? And number 1 on that list was, I wish I had the courage to live a life that is true to myself and not listen to what everyone else around me wanted me to do. So if I can give you one message, is to take that top 1 regret, sit with that, and sit with yourself for 20 minutes and ask yourself, if no one else had an opinion, what would I be doing differently? Fully honest. Even if you never ever say those words out loud to anyone, but start by getting honest with yourself. It can be one small step. It can be in your health journey, in your relationship, in your work. It doesn't matter. Start by getting honest. Start with the habit of being honest to yourself. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Adele, for sharing that message. So I know you mentioned, as we spoke in our podcast, about something called an energy audit. Can you tell us a little more about that, and how our listeners can access that energy audit?
Yeah, of course. I think the energy audit is one of my absolute the most powerful tools that I work with my clients. Because in the end, if you know, everything is energy, right? You know how they say, like, energy speaks way, way before you do. So if we know that everything is energy, we can also start to tap into the current energy that we have and look at, what's draining my energy and what's giving me energy. And once we can identify that, we can start to maybe eliminate what's draining my energy, or even maybe just shift that if we talk about perspective. And we can double down on what gives me energy. And it can be anything from habits, people, environments, tasks, thoughts, beliefs, like what is contributing to the life that I want and what is actually sucking the life force out of me, right? And so I actually do have an energy audit as a resource on my website that you can download for free. So just visit my website and download it there, and just start to recognize what's draining your energy and what's giving you energy. And that itself could have a huge impact of your life.
Awesome. Thank you, Adele. So we'll drop the link so you can access the energy audit, and you can download the energy audit. And thank you, Adele, for being on our show. Look forward to seeing you again. And to the listeners, keep inspiring and keep impacting people's lives. This is Harry Ramsay signing off from the Impactful Coaching Podcast.